I don't think that the media and many others are really going to let any sort of meaningful right-wing movement ever develop. And one thing that I think is really interesting is looking at the current developments in Argentina. And now I'm going to say some nice things about Argentina. So if anyone at the Home Office is watching, please, I'm still British. I don't renounce my citizenship. But yes, I'm going to compliment one of their politicians.
Don't worry, I too was rooting for Clarkson and the boys in that Top Gear special as they were trying to escape.
I still call them the Falklands, all right? So I've not turned. But yes, I think there's actually some really good developments going on. So Argentina's got an election coming up on the 22nd of October, 2023, and they're going through some rather serious problems. So here we have the IMF's top 10 biggest debtors. And if I scroll down, here's a little sort of visual representation of who owes the IMF money. And you can see a giant Argentinian-shaped square on that left-hand side that's bigger than any other country. Ukraine, for example, could be swallowed up at least a couple of times, even though they are at war. Egypt, for some reason, quite indebted, but Argentina, massive. Clearly, it's a massive problem for them.
I mean, Argentina takes up as much debt as most of Africa does there. So that's pretty bad.
It certainly is.
Pray tell, has up until this point Argentina been run by communists?
There have been some leftists in charge, yes.
Well,
they've been fiscally irresponsible. And they also had to have a last-minute deal with the IMF to avoid defaulting on repaying their loans, which obviously is very, very bad for their economy. And yes, what is good, though, is this. Argentina, radical right-winger shakes up presidential race with primary win. And he's not radical in the same way that, you know, people might refer to, say, quite conservative right-wingers in the United States. It's somewhat different. So I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce his second name. I've heard it said many a time, but if I get it wrong and you're Argentinian, please lambast me. Say it, the Malvinas Islands, if you must.
I'm sure you've got all manner of inventive South American insults for us, so please just throw as many as you'd like at Josh.
But I'm just going to refer to him as Javier because that's easy. So basically,
this guy basically, as far as I'm aware, has come out of nowhere. He's just sprung from the ether and is really
certainly in the presidential sense, in that he's been involved in politics for quite some time. He's had quite a long and storied career in economics and finance. He's quite well qualified. And so he's had a long career and he's appeared on TV quite a lot and gained a following from his quite charismatic delivery, I suppose you could say. And he's served in Congress since 2021.
Loud. That's another word for his delivery.
It is indeed. But I was looking at some of the things he believes, and I think the funniest summary is from Wikipedia, because the person who wrote this was absolutely seething. But it's the best advert for him I've ever read.
Eyes dilating, sweating, breaking out in a rash.
Several of his political positions have caused controversy, such as his opposition to abortion, even in the case of rape, the rejection of sexual education in schools, skepticism about the CUF 18+1 injection, support for the free possession of firearms by civilian population, promotion of far-right cultural Marxism conspiracy theory, and climate change denial. Due to those controversies, as well as his far-right political positions and radical conservative economics, they're not radically conservative, you imbecile, and social policies, his primaries win has been considered an upset and has been characterized as far-right populist. I love how loads of sort of establishment figures use the term populist as if they're dangerous. These people are bad. Oh, populism. Just meaning that, yeah, they've got on-the-ground support.
It's the funny thing about democracy, isn't it? Democracy is God until all of a sudden it's populist democracy, because then the Democrats will be appealing to the wishes of the people who vote them in, almost like they're representatives of their will or something, which
That's
I thought was the whole point.
Yeah. It's funny
I thought that was the whole point, but I read earlier today a quote from Michael Hudson, an economist who's a leftist, but he's still quite good on these things, where he basically summed up as, on the international stage, democracy means in favor of American foreign policy.
It's not wrong, is it, really?
That's pretty much it, really, isn't it? Beyond anything else.
Certainly in the present day. But I wanted to show you this video, which I thoroughly enjoyed. So just to give you a bit of context, and if you don't speak Spanish, he has a board in front of him with all of the Argentinian government departments. And he's going along and everyone he tears off of the board is one he intends to abolish. So let's have a watch of this, shall we?
Ministerio de Cultura, afuera. Ministerio de Ambiente y Desarrollo Sostenible, afuera. Ministerio de las Mujeres y Género y Diversidad, afuera. Ministerio de Obras Públicas, afuera. Aunque te resistas. Vamos a seguir por acá. Ministerio de Ciencia y Tecnología e Innovación. Algo bien del sector privado. Nada bueno salió del sector público. ¡Afuera! Ministerio de Trabajo, Empleo y Seguridad Social. ¡Afuera! Ministerio de Educación. Adoctrinamiento. ¡Afuera! Ministerio de Transporte. ¡Afuera! Ministerio de Salud. ¡Afuera! Ministerio de Desarrollo Social. ¡Afuera! ¿Cómo queda el Estado? Ministerio de Capital Humano. Ministerio de Infraestructura, Ministerio de Economía, Ministerio de Justicia, Ministerio de Seguridad, Ministerio de Defensa, Ministerio de Relaciones Exteriores y Ministerio del Interior.
So it sounds like he's saying these are the ones I'm keeping for now.
Yes.
So among those that he said he's getting rid of, I could tell generally it seemed that he was getting rid of the Department of Social Security, as you mentioned. He was definitely getting rid of the Ministry of Justice, not Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Culture or something like that, which will be another.
There was one about innovation.
There was indoctrination.
There was diversity.
The diversity ones he was getting rid of.
Also, salud means health, so he's getting rid of the Ministry of Health.
So he's going to be privatizing ties. So he's basically saying anything and everything that could be and has been infiltrated by leftists. So just going.
Mm-hmm.
I respect it. I like the attitude as well. Mm-hmm. Afuera! That's great.
It makes me wish I could speak Spanish just so I could flamboyantly tear up all of the government departments I want to get rid of. I mean, it was a little bit statist for my taste. I mean, I would just have like Department of Defense and that's it.
See, most of what I know about this guy is that he is into Austrian economics and is a libertarian. And he does, in some of the clips that I've seen, you can never trust the quality of some translations, but he seemed to be going very firebrand in some of the really anti-status. But from that, he seemed like he was being promisingly realist, which is basically saying, okay, if I get in, I'm not going to be able to get rid of everything. There's going to need to be some infrastructure left over, so that because otherwise, if you create this massive power vacuum, there's going to be a massive decline and a collapse. But we can get rid of all of these departments, which are useless hives of leftist soul-sucking bureaucrats who are just there to pick up a paycheck and brainwash your children.
Yeah, well, you're not wrong. And the way he's spoke about leftists before is just like, yes, if you give them an inch, they will take a mile. They will use it against you. So do not do anything. And he was basically doing what is equivalent. I'm quoting his words more or less. He was calling them left-tards. On national television, and he is the front runner.
And he was fiery with it as well. Beyond anything else, I respect two things. One, his attitude, and two, his ability to accurately see that they are his enemies, and he cannot give them, as you say, even an inch. You must destroy everything that they love. All of your precious government departments, afuera!
Just destroy everything they love. That makes us sound very villainous, doesn't it?
Yeah, but they're evil.
Also, yes.
They're evil and they want to chop off your children's genitals. So
that's true.
I'm sorry, you are evil.
Mm-hmm. But if you want to learn a bit more about libertarianism, here is an episode of Contemplations, my series, which me and Harry went over some libertarian ideas. And I feel like we did it a good service because I myself consider myself quite libertarian. And you have read a lot of libertarian.
I don't, but I'm very familiar with a lot of the concepts. And so we had a good give and take in regards to what was the good ideas and what was some of what I considered some of the bad ideas.
I think we were broadly in agreement. I mean, you still have some sympathies.
Oh, absolutely. Some of when you actually get the more Austrian Mises-style libertarians down to talk about realpolitik, they're excellent because a lot of them are very elite theory pilled. And just through the recognition of the fact that they are outside of power, they have a great way, they have a great frame of reference for how power operates from observing it from the outside.
Absolutely. So I wanted to talk about largely, the main focus of this segment is that the media will not allow this sort of thing to succeed because, of course, his economic policy to rescue Argentina, I think, is actually quite sound and is quite reasonable because it's cutting government spending so that they can get on top of their very large debts, which Makes sense, funnily enough.
But if they cut government spending, who's going to pay the useless economists and financial advisors?
I know. Well, these people should not be calling themselves experts in any shape or form if it's got to that point.
No, I mean, these media pundits, these sorts of people that we're going to be looking at in a moment, every single one of these, the only reason that they're going against this is because they know that their entire existence, their entire livelihood rests upon the order that he wants to destroy. And so they're just scrambling. They're scrambling because they want to survive.
Well, yeah, it's entirely self-interested, isn't it?
They shouldn't. We need to destroy them.
So, unsurprisingly, The Guardian uses the usual tactic at the minute of calling anyone who isn't an establishment figure far-right. And here they say far-right outsider takes shock lead in Argentinian primary election. And Al Jazeera as well, who is Javier Milei, I think I'm pronouncing it quite French, sorry. Argentina's far-right populist politician. And
they're using all of these angry photos of him as well. They've really chosen these. And it's very difficult. I'm sorry.
It's not flattering, is it?
It's difficult for me to take him entirely seriously with hair like that. But he does have a refreshingly old school look to him. He looks straight out of the 1970s.
He does. He also reminds me of particularly a combination of Ray Liotta and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine with the sideburns there.
I can see it. I can see it. Also,
Only
very
somewhat.
Blue eyes.
I mean, I wonder where those came from.
I wonder.
So here we have another one. This is The Week. Far-right candidate who wants to legalize organ sales wins Argentinian presidential primary. And this is something that...
Does he actually?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I agree with him. Like, I know it sounds somewhat dystopian, but...
I mean, I've not thought about the issue at all, really, because it's not something that typically comes up.
There are two things. First of all, I'm an organ donor anyway, because I think that, I don't need the organs when I'm dead. So I'd rather, they go towards someone to save them. And that, still stands. But also, if you can write some sort of agreement where when you die, your family gets your organs and they can sell the money and make a lot of money because the organ market is quite lucrative.
That's a good inheritance, actually.
So yes.
You're bringing me around to it.
The whole premise of Breaking Bad would not exist if Walter White could sell his organs.
You wouldn't go to my dad. Hey, Dad, do you mind just signing this for me?
So if you want less drugs on the street, sell your organs. You heard it here first. But no, I think if you can't decide what is done with your own body, then what freedom do you have? And I think if people don't want to do it, then fine. But allow me to sell my organs if I die, and then my family can get the money. I don't need them. So yeah, I agree with this wholeheartedly, and I've mimetically been saying it for a long time, but I do genuinely also believe it.
Okay.
I'm very passionate about it.
Once again, I've not really thought about it to have many arguments for or against, so I will let the comments decide.
To be fair, I do treat my internal organs like a rental car. I am running them in before I hand them over. So
yours wouldn't even bring a great market price anyway. You're screwing over your children's inheritance, man. What are you doing?
I know. I need to start eating some more fruit and veg, don't I?
No, fruit and veg don't help. Red meat, steak. That's what's going to get you good.
I've got a steak tonight, to be fair, so you'll be happy.
There you go.
So some more here. This is France getting in on it as well. France 24, far-right candidate, finishes first in Argentina's presidential. Yes, there we go. More stuff. Also, here we have The Telegraph, surprisingly, going very hard on him. Hard-right rock singer and tantric sex instructor takes shock lead in Argentina's election.
Is he actually a rock singer and tantric sex instructor?
He was in a band.
Okay.
He played, I think he largely played Rolling Stones.
So if I ever end up a far-right contender in a political race, I hope they call me rock star.
But I think the sort of sex stuff is him reveling in the libertarian reputation for being a bit of a degenerate. Like he brought it up on TV as like a bit of a laugh. Just like saying,
he's playing into the image. So
but I think he might have actually done that. So
I suppose there is a virtue to this, which is if you play into the image, if you play up that whole aspect, they can't attack you on it because you've made yourself bulletproof. It's like Tyrion. If you wear your disabilities as a badge of honor, they will always be your shield. He's just being like, yeah, I'm a complete degenerate. What of it?
I mean, I don't necessarily approve of this. Like
I don't know what a tantric sex instructor is.
Like tantra is like an Eastern sex thing. Like I don't really know too much about it, funnily enough. but I know roughly what it is.
I mean, to be fair, in that case, it might not even be entirely degenerate. It might be some kind of spiritual experience.
Instructor, though, I mean, really?
Wouldn't you?
No.
I don't believe you.
I'm not going to do that.
I don't.
You're out of your mind.
I don't believe you.
You're really throwing me under the bus here.
No, Josh is a very sensible young man.
Thank you. Now, after all you've said, people aren't going to believe it, even though you're being honest. So there's also this, which confused me. This is a Spanish European Union funded channel, and they call him an ultra-liberal, which I suppose isn't too unfair. I mean, libertarian makes more sense. But
and if you're going with the kind of Misesian classical liberal definition, then perhaps it would be... And this guy, he just seems like a complete oddball, doesn't he?
That's why I like him.
More than anything. He's charming, I'll tell you that.
No, I mean, it takes a lot for a Brit to root for an Argentinian, so...
It really does.
It's not in my nature, trust me. So there are also the fact that they're all calling him far right or hard right. And I think one of his views that you could see is the most right-wing, sort of conservative, if you will, are his views on abortion. And it's worth pointing out that going back into about 2021, Argentina passed the most liberal laws on abortion out of any South American country, I think.
Oh, really? What would that entail?
It's basically like similar to Europe. Whereas if we go over to this, you can see that red means more prohibition. Request. Yeah. Whereas the rest of South America is at least trending towards the no, we kind of think it's bad.
A bit here and there. Okay.
Yeah. So him saying yes, under no circumstances. I mean, Nicaragua, Honduras, Suriname is sort of, consistent with that. I mean, that's sort of Caribbean way, isn't it? But it's not too out of whack for South America, but it may seem extreme to people who only consume mainstream media in the West.
In the West, it's a position that I consider myself as holding as well, to be perfectly honest. So I'm in support of it. I know that you're a bit more liberal than me on this, but you're not some freak who thinks that up until birth is the
definitely not.
Point, because that is just evil.
I'm still more conservative than any country in Europe.
That's good to hear.
And also, I think that in the case
I'll win you over eventually. Connor will morally browbeat you.
I also think in the case of rape, you should get rid of the progeny of the rapist and also castrate them. So I think you should remove them from the gene pool, basically.
I disagree, because that's very sins of the father. And also I'd imagine, because I know that his stance on this is no exceptions for rape, is he will
say it'll be punishing the baby.
I agree with that, but also being a libertarian, I would imagine that it's him applying the non-aggression principle.
Sure, you're probably right. So back onto some more smearing. The BBC got in on this as well. They've decided to call him a Trump admirer, which, except in America, carries a bit of low weight, because the rest of the world tends to be either left-wing or a target of American foreign policy. And so it doesn't necessarily carry the weight it should. Normally, that should be a good thing.
Even leftists across Europe aren't fans of American foreign policy. So.
No, that's true. But it's their notion of trying to smear him, basically, even though the rest of the article makes no mention of Trump. It's just
it's just in the headline.
Yeah, it's just in the headline.
So they don't even prove it with any evidence.
No.
This is our publicly funded news broadcast.
It's meant to be impartial, but it doesn't seem to be to me. And in fact, I think it's more of a positive advert, because they also there were lots of other comparisons to Bolsonaro as well, but that's not necessarily bad either.
What? So the two most populist and charismatic leaders in all of the Americas. He's just like them. We'll get him this time, guys.
Don't you know that charisma is far right?
Yes, at this point, yes, it is.
So here's another one. This is actually somewhat good. I wanted to show some praise to media actually doing good things. Argentina's Trump. Oh, no, it's not actually. I'll jump in the gun. This is Argentina's Trump. So that was the final bad one. And then we finally get to the good ones. I don't know why they keep on making this.
If it's the Times, they might be using Trump in a positive way. Probably not, but maybe.
No, I doubt it. But surprisingly, the Washington Post ran a reasonable headline. Who is Javier, blah, 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 Argentina's right-wing presidential frontrunner.
You're really selling him by just not saying his surname.
I don't want to mispronounce it. I mean, I'm doing the typical English person thing of just don't speak foreign.
That makes sense to me.
I know that's very much your position.
Just call him Millet, because that's what
I think that's actually how it's pronounced. Millet, yeah.
Javier Millet. That's how you say it.
Up to your...
Say it in English.
Yeah, we didn't win the Falklands War to be pronounce it in North Spanish.
There you go.
But
simple.
Yes, also Bloomberg as well. Here are Javier Milei's proposals for Argentina. Completely neutral. You can't fault it really. And they just talk about his actual policy. And the Financial Times. Argentina's Milei quake.
You know what? He does look like crazy Bill Murray.
I think the choice of thumbnail is kind of hilarious for the Financial Times as well.
That's genius. He needs to play into this. He played into all of the other stupid stereotypes that he could have. So why not just bring out a beaver? A groundhog. I should say. God, it's even Groundhog in the name Day. Of the film.
Call yourself a film buff, Harry.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is hilarious.
Mm-hmm. So another smear story that they tried out was this one. Argentine peso plunges after anti-establishment presidential candidate Javier Milei wins primary, and NBC, CSNBC even, did a similar thing. Argentina devalues its currency, jacks up interest rates after shock far-right primary win. They're really going in for it.
Okay, well, that's the banks that did that, not him. And the banks do whatever they want because the banks are an arm of the establishment.
But they're implying that this is a very strong reaction to his election. Like it's a bad thing. That, the economy is going to be bad if he wins.
They always do stuff like this. This is what they did under Truss, where the bank intentionally does something to make it seem like, it's a direct result of it. No, you're doing it on purpose.
So CSNBC says, Argentina's central bank devalued its currency, the peso, by close to 18% and hiked its benchmark interest rates by a whopping 21 percentage points to 118% on Monday following a shock primary election. But let's actually look at the Argentinian peso.
Well, you know why they're doing that.
Versus the US dollar.
Not looking good.
2013 on the left, August of this year on the right. Look at that plummeting value.
So it's kind of hard to devalue it any more than it already was.
I mean, yeah, one peso is worth 0.00285732 US dollars, to be precise.
That's not even the number. I think you just made up. Oh, wait, no. At the top. Sorry. I thought I was looking at the graph at the figure it gives at the bottom there, but no, you're right. It's even lower.
I can read sometimes.
I'm sorry. I mistook. I can't, evidently.
I also like it just says one arse as well. Is that your currency, Argentina?
Just the one. No more for me.
But yeah, speaking of arses, I mean, their currency is as good as toilet paper at this point. So I'm not surprised that it takes a lot to devalue it even further, which, funnily enough, is one of the things that he intends to tackle, is that they seem to just be constantly printing money to the point where it's just stealing money from people's savings.
Also, it just says
all inflation is.
Argentina's central bank purposefully devalued its currency. Well, I assume, given his politics, that he's going to come in and destroy the central bank.
He's going to abolish it.
He's going to abolish the central bank. So they're giving him more ammunition. He can just turn around and say, they keep doing this on purpose. I'm going to stop them from doing that.
I mean, is it unsurprising that he's so popular in the first place, considering the state of this graph?
When you've got this graph, and then also the amount of debt they owe as well.
Yes. I mean,
they're in a state.
Yeah, it makes sense that someone might be somewhat drawn to Austrian economics when all of the other economics have failed, even though it's the best economics, I might add. I hope you agree, Harry. Don't stand.
Certainly, of all the ones that I've read, yes.
Correct. Well done. So he wants to dollarize Argentina's economy, which pretty much means using the dollar as a form of reserve currency. So the Argentinian peso can have some grounding in money that isn't nearly as inflationary as the Argentinian one, which isn't perfect. The gold standard would probably be better, but you've got to
take an intermediary phase. The only problem with doing something like this is you don't want to get under the thumb of the American foreign policy.
Yes.
And this going with the dollar as your reserve currency gives them an in to do such a thing.
It does
but
indeed.
I think what this is trying to get out from under the heel of China instead, because I've seen that they're currently doing business with China. So this would be switching from working with China to switching with the West, which some would say is a step in the right direction. Some would say you're just swapping out one leash for another, potentially.
Yeah, and I think that because the US is losing people who are using the dollar as a reserve currency, although obviously they're still massively in the lead. I think the euro is the next best reserve currency, but it's not. I mean, it's over 2 times the euro, so it's still not doing badly by any stretch of the imagination. But they also don't want to lose their power and influence and economic benefits from it, and so it makes sense that they would want to keep people favourable to it. So I think he may be aware of that. That if you use the dollar to control countries to an extent that might be unsavory, then it's going to put people off and push them towards your opposition, which is only going to hurt you more than if you'd done nothing in the first place. So there is some sort of logic there. He's not just setting himself up to become a puppet necessarily, although that could happen.
It is still worrying, especially if you're going with the abortion laws that he would be aiming for as well. If you start to take the dollar as the reserve currency, then that gives the US room to add extra financial sanctions against you if you're doing something that they don't want you doing.
Which is probably a bit of an issue.
There is a lot of give and take that you've got to do with a decision like this. But whatever they've been doing for the past 10 years and beyond certainly has not been working.
I mean, at the minute, probably getting the economy on track. So the Argentinians aren't being absolutely shafted by the central bankers is probably a good first step in improving the country. And he basically talked about how easy it is to do it and how it's not unreasonable, and other South American countries have done so as well. So there is a model to follow if you need to do it. And so it seems like he actually might do some stuff to legitimately improve the economy. But this is important because if he succeeds, this is going to be a model for the rest of the world to suggest, yes, these Austrian economics, there is some truth to it, which I definitely think there is. I think there's lots of evidence to suggest there is. And it will mean that other right-wing movements around the world are going to say, hey, look at Argentina. I know they're a weird economic case, and economists say, there are rich countries, there are poor countries, and then there are Japan and Argentina. That's like a running joke, that they just seem to not fit any sort of trends or predictions. But at the same time, if the principles he sets in motion work, it's going to really, really undermine the establishment and how they run this sort of neoliberal money printer, quantitative easing.
If we can stop the printer from going, then I'm happy.
Yes. In fact, I would like to just smash up the money printer, say we're never printing any more money ever again. Not even replacing the stuff destroyed in circulation.
There's literally trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, and that's just dollars in circulation across the world. I think if we just leave it alone for a little bit, we can let things even out so that everybody's on a fair financial footing.
Yeah. That's not that radical. In fact, in the past, that was what people did. And for some reason,
that was the whole point of the gold standard was to rein in too much money printing.
Exactly. So finally, he does have a World Economic Forum page. So to all of the people who are eating crayons at the minute.
With what looks to be his high school photo.
It does, yeah. So all of you eating crayons at the minute, put down the crayons and quickly listen to me. So just because they have a World Economic Forum page doesn't mean they support Klaus Schwab and all of his ideology. For example, Vivek Ramaswamy, the person running for the Republican presidency, had to sue them to remove the page they created against his consent. So they create them for people, whether they want them or not. So it's worth... And also...
Putin also was on the WEF pages, and look at that.
Well, exactly. So yes, I see this all the time, and it winds me up just like, no... Just because they made a web page about someone doesn't mean that they're...
Yeah.
And also, if Klaus Schwab is now, Austrian economics is good, well, long reign the World Economic Forum.
For God's sake. I think, just to cap that off, the World Economic Forum, if you really want to tell if somebody's in on the agenda or not, just type their name into Google with World Economic Forum. If they come up with a page, okay, that's a start. But also the World Economic Forum has lots of different agendas that they do globally. They have lots of different programs, and they have lots of conferences as well. So you can find if they've spoken at one of these conferences, and you can see what they've said at one of the conferences.
I think he may have spoken once or twice before. I don't know.
If there's a video of this man sitting down and saying, I agree with the ESG, DEI agenda, then, oh my God, we found it, boys. But he literally said that he was going to destroy the diversity department and crush the central bank.
I don't think someone who uses the term leftards is captured by the World Economic Forum. Just saying. But I think he's at least my guy. I want this guy to win. I hope that it's going to be a positive model for...
It'll be fun. Mm-hmm. If we can get him on Twitter as well, I can only imagine that might be
He's already on Twitter.
Oh, okay. I must follow him in that case, because he might just be Argentinian Trump.
And if he fails, we can take over the West Falklands. Or is it the East Falklands? I can't remember. But the rest of Argentina, whatever. So it's win-win for the Brits. That's the way I see it. If it goes well, we get to copy their economics and, we can dig ourselves out of the spending hole. If not, the Falklands are safe. And so that's not my parting message.
Josh is playing both sides so that he comes up top either way.
Yes, I am Mac from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. But yes, my point being is keep an eye on this and also pay attention to the media, because whenever someone is called an evil far-right boogeyman or they're scary or they've got bad policies, actually you look at what they're actually suggesting and it's quite reasonable and it's actually quite popular a lot of the time. Like, he is the front runner. He's the favorite now to win the presidency. So he can't be that bad, can he, really?
Thanks for watching that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters. I hope you enjoyed it and found it informative. If you'd like to support the work that we do here, then you can subscribe to our website for as little as £5 per month to get access to all of the work that we have on there, including the most recent interview from Carl, where he's talking to Thierry Baudet and John Laughlin about the future of liberal democracy. If you'd like to catch up with what Carl is doing on a day-to-day basis, you can follow him on Twitter at Sargon_of_Acad and on Getter at Carl Benjamin. Thanks again for watching and take care.